Boys, week 11 was a doozy. We had some massively high scoring teams. You even see it. Three teams above 150 is pretty epic. We also had a few teams that, like myself, maybe didn't quite get to your predicteds. But when it's that much green, you know there was a lot of action, definitely some individual performances, and a ton of points on the board. So exciting times, because as we all know, definitely coming into this week, everybody needed to secure that win. Before we see who did, let's just quickly pop in and check in on the NFL. For the most part, week 11 was kind of fun. Scores were high for the most part, and while you can't win them all, in this particular case, I think we're going to see more green and over-predicted Yahoo teams than under. Even if we actually go to the league as a whole, it's like a bit too perfect right now. Everything kind of just is as it's supposed to be, I guess. Our playoff teams in each of the AFC and NFC, there's 7 teams that are above 500 in each conference. There's our playoff teams right there. We look at even the close and upset games. I mean, I'm sure if you're a Bears fan, you're just getting tired of these heartbreaking losses. No shots fired on this one, but the Packers kind of always beat the Bears, and they did, even though it was a blocked field goal that did it. The Bills upset the Chiefs, or not really an upset. They actually were favored, but that's because even though the Chiefs were undefeated, and now we don't have an undefeated team, the Bills kind of always beat the Chiefs in the regular season. So not really super newsworthy, even though it was a pretty entertaining game. NFC North was pretty much as it is, a super defensive slog. Or we look at a team like the Cleveland Browns, who unfortunately have bumped into the Saints during a 2-game winning streak after they get a new coach and he clogs the toilet. Suddenly they're unbeatable. The Browns actually did throw for a lot of yards, even though their best offensive player didn't really get off the go, but Taysom Hill occasionally is going to Taysom Hill, and that's just kind of what we expect. Turns out he was the Tim Tebow everyone actually wanted all along, but once or twice a year he has a game that just wins fantasy teams and wins actual games. So again, kind of too perfect. Even some of the teams we love to kick when they're down. I mean, the Jets did what the Jets do, and under the Aaron Rodgers regime, they lose because that's just what they do. It was a close one, and they played okay, but they lost. And then they fired a coach for Rodgers, but not for Rodgers, but, for Rodgers, because that's what they do. Dallas is either really, really good or funny when they're bad, and right now Jerry Jones can't admit that he's blinding his own players and then almost, and I say this because it didn't happen, almost slicing fans in half ghost ship style because we have things falling from the ceilings. And he's just kind of like, yeah, that's football. Because, yeah, it's Jerry Jones. And it's kind of just too perfect right now. Even we had our best team, arguably, I think you got to admit, the Lions are right now probably the best team in the league. And they just put like high school stats up on the worst team, or one of them, in Jacksonville. I mean, we're talking like when you're good at Madden, but you still play in beginner mode kind of stats. Goff had almost as many touchdowns this week as he had interceptions last week, so that's saying something. So I'm not really sure what to expect from here. Is this just what we get for the next couple weeks as we head into our fantasy playoffs, that everything just is as it should be? I don't think it can be. We got 6 teams on the bye. It's a huge bye week. It's going to have massive implications for our season, even though the NFL knows it's going to be fantasy season. They just don't seem to care. Which, again, though, is about right. But I don't know. I'm waiting for something crazy to happen in week 12. I don't know if it's just going to be like normal kind of crazy, some Rojo Caliente crazy, or like Rodgers is going to retire. Because let's be honest, I don't know any team that now would want to hire him when you're going to lose and you're going to lose your staff. But he probably, if we're going to go off the wall crazy, wouldn't that be he quits, joins a fake doctor and a media personality and running a country? I mean, that's in the cards. We are in that zone, unfortunately. Anyway, we'll see how it goes, because obviously we're shifting our focus here. NFL is great, and obviously what we're going for, but come on. We're almost in the playoff stretch here, and fantasy sports outweighs it. So let's get right to the scores. Chaz, last week I did say that if you wanted to make the playoffs, you better go on a run, and you better go on a run now. And man, did you listen. Not only did you get the win, but you also had the top scoring team. And this was in a week where that was competitive. We had 3 teams over 150. So how did you do it? Well, let's be honest. So I should say going into this, obviously we have a big performance this week in a tight end / quarterback. So technically Hill was the quarterback and tight end one. I included him for our numbers as a tight end one. So no, anytime I say a quarterback number, shift them down one if you want to count Hill as a quarterback like Yahoo does, but I don't. which means you had the quarterback one and the tight end one. You essentially had the two top scores. You also had a wide receiver two, and realistically, you didn't even need it. But why not? Achane even also had a great week, and McCaffrey still hasn't quite come fully back, but not too shabby. Now, this negates the fact that Mark did have some people in the points. I mean, Chase was the wide receiver 5, even though he didn't go off like most weeks. But let's be honest, Mark, you've been chasing people with those monster weeks, so you just got hilled on this one, so you can't really complain. Stafford was our quarterback 4, but realistically, Kyle was the pits, and Mr. Jones was having a conversation with Tennessee's actually randomly tough run defense, so there's not a whole lot you could do on that one. Pittsburgh was also the defense 5, so you really had your peaks and valleys here, Mark. Now, unfortunately for you, there's enough teams in that mix that you kept your number 2 spot alive, and Chaz, like I said, you're going to see when the standings come. This was a big win, but you might need to do it again next week. Jake, you hang on to our top spot, and actually you were only a couple points off being the overall number 1 scorer this week. Both of your teams did have some points to be reckoned with on the Monday, but we knew it wasn't going to be super close. Now, Justin, just to look at you quickly, you had a down week by Jackson, but you had an up week by Barkley. Actually, coming into Thursday, you look like a big favorite because Barkley came out and definitely put on a good start to your week. But aside from Houston on the Monday nighter, getting you to a situation where they ended up being the defense 1, you also did have Detroit's kicker, because everyone on Detroit was scoring this week. They were the kicker 3. But you had too many downs, and especially the Taylor, Kelsey, and Smith combo just wasn't going to hack it. But realistically, it was Jake's to win all along. He had the wide receiver 1 in St. Brown. Like I said, on the Monday nighter, he came out and had a running back 1 to your running back 2 in Mixon. And you did have, obviously, some good representation around. Jennings didn't crack a top 5, neither did Gibbs, but they're obviously solid performances. And Mahomes had a rare outing where he actually did hit and actually slightly exceeded as predicted. You left a few points on the bench, but honestly, did it matter? It just would have meant you would have gotten the top score overall. So, Jake, huge win, and you haven't quite clinched, but you can't be too far off. With another performance or two like that, I think you'll be sitting pretty, because you definitely want to make sure you secure some of the green and hopefully get a bye. Justin, this one costs you a little bit because you slip out here. You're not in the top 6 as of now, so you're going to have to bounce back in week 12. V, in any other week 154, you're going to be the first team I talk about, but like I said, there was 3 teams, you being the third, that cracked the 150 mark. Crazy enough, you did it without your boy Hurts, but this time you finally got your boy Hall. Your number 1 pick paid off. He was the running back 3, and actually you ended up being kind of the Curry of this week. That's the 3rd spot. Brock Bowers, tight end 3. Higgins, wide receiver 3, hitting 3s until night. That's a cheap one, but I'm taking it anyway. And you kind of needed it because Horst came out to play. Now, Allen just exceeded, but he wasn't really your guy. The biggest thing you had going for you, Horst, was definitely your running backs. You had the running back 3 and 4 on the week. Sorry, not 3 and 4, 4 and 5. We already know the 3 went that way. And you had the top scoring kicker by far in Boswell. So that's going to be enough to win you most weeks, but not against V and not now. Both of you had some point options on the bench, but I don't think anything that would have tilted the scales too much. So congratulations to both, because if the league finished right now, you'd both be hanging in there as the last 2 spots to get in. So we'll see how close that is when we get to the scheduler, but that's where you want to be with a couple weeks left for sure. Ben, you're going to have to change your name because you didn't start one of your actual mainstays here. You'll take a look, and CD was on the bench. He would have helped you out instead of McLovin, but you didn't need him anyway because B was one of the few people to just barely cross his threshold and barrier. This was a very high-scoring week, so congratulations there, Ben. Now, Burrow was the quarterback 2. Nakua didn't crack the top 5, but obviously that's a pretty good performance with 22. Johnny Smith, though, was a huge pickup, tight end 2 for you, and they were kind of enough to pave the way. Like I said, with the bench, you could have gotten a little spicier, but you certainly didn't need it. Now for UB, the problem is you really didn't have too many top 5s. Minnesota was our defense 4 on the week. I think a lot of people expected a bit more from people like Knox or maybe Bijan having a game, but obviously he bumped into a tough defense. You kind of did have a bad matchup all around, with Dell probably having your best matchup against Dallas, but they didn't need to throw, and Mixon pretty much stole all the touches there. So unfortunately for UB, because you did need that win, you're in that mix of being tied, as we're going to see in a minute. Ben, you're on the other side of that hump, up a game now, top 4. Let's see if we can all hang on to it. I instinctively said we all there because I meant myself too, knowing that I took the loss this week. Now I was fortunate enough to keep my spot up there, but obviously if I do it again, not going to work. John, this was a huge one for you because now you're going to be in that tie bit that we're going to talk about in just a second. Now technically this was hopefully for me going to be the Monday Night Miracle. John, you had a 54% chance to win this going into Monday night because you had CJ in the kicker and I had Nico Collins. So all I was hoping for was CJ to throw a bunch of interceptions. He only threw one, not like the week before. Could have used that one. And I was hoping any touchdown he threw was to Nico Collins. Turns out, psych, he wasn't going to throw on him anyway. So you did a good job of making sure I didn't hit my predicted. But unfortunately, that meant that Houston kicked a ton and the game script just kind of went against me on this one. So you took it by a few points and it was a Monday night style miracle. You did so with the defense 3 to my defense 2, but if you can see, they actually both tied for second. I also did have the kicker 4, whereas you didn't. You just kind of outscored, and I had a few people just give mediocre performances, whereas you had, aside from your wide receivers, all pretty standard, decent performances, with Dobbins obviously stepping up. Now, the thing that sucks for me is had I started Love, I would have won, but then again, if you would have put Thomas maybe in for either one of your receivers, don't know if that would have been a pretty gutsy call, but it wouldn't have mattered then anyway. Like I said, doesn't really matter so much. The week is now done. I was fortunate enough to hang on to a playoff spot. And John, as we're going to see in a second, you're still in the fight for yours. All right, taking a look, like I said, Jake's got a couple point lead, so I think if he wins, he clinches the number 1, but I'm not 100% sure. I actually don't think there's too many universes that exist where he doesn't even make the playoffs. He would have to go on an epic loss, but with the number of points he has, I think you're fine here, Jake, and I'm not just trying to jinx you. I think the real fight begins after that. We got a 3-way tie for second, and obviously then pretty much everybody but Chaz is tied for tied for 5th, and then Chaz is only a game out. So this is, as advertised, this is what always happens in our league. So much parity, so much last minute stuff, so it's definitely going to come down to matchups. Taking a look at week 12 here, 2 playoff teams and me and the Rhino. Not the time I want to see Kevin because I know he's going to be gunning for it this week. Although I guess if I win, I separate myself from one of the people below. And realistically, let's be honest, there's no easy ones here. We definitely have a few key ones. I think 2 teams just out. This is maybe the teams you want to play to try and bump yourself back in because Chaz, that's someone you got to leapfrog. I think this is an interesting one where we have another 2 teams who are currently in the playoffs but are only off by 1 game and 1 spot. B, if you want to play spoiler and take Jake down, it's your turn to give it a run. So let's see how it kind of goes. I think we do have that good mix of some teams in, some teams out. I don't even want to pretend I'm going to know what happens. It's going to be the Thursday nighter. I'm going to overreact, and then who knows when it comes down to the Sundays. So with this many bye weeks and how hectic this is, it's really anyone's guess. Not only do I repeat myself every week, but I repeat myself saying that I've repeated myself every week. But how do you fix this? Every single year it comes down to the last couple weeks. Everybody's in the running. I do think someone technically has clinched, but not technically clinched. Jake, if you want to break that down mathematically for me and tell me what you would have to do to actually not be in the top 6, you go ahead. Epic week. Don't even want to talk too much about it. Super nervous about the 6 teams on bye. I'm expecting a lot of roster movement. Can't wait. We got hours till the first kickoff. Best of luck in week 12, everyone.